I'm Rachel, 36, and I built a successful HVAC business after starting as a simple AC technician. For years, I've been fully funding my younger sister Tiffany's expensive college education. But when she kicked me out of her Thanksgiving dinner for just being an AC tech in front of her wealthy new friends, I made a decision that changed everything between us. Have you ever had your own family make you feel worthless for your honest profession? Let me know if you've experienced something similar. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If this resonates with you at all, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories about standing up for yourself. Sometimes the people closest to us can hurt us the most, but what happens next might surprise you. Growing up in a middle-class family in Ohio, my parents Judy and Frank always taught us the value of hard work. Dad was a plumber who worked long hours, and Mom was an elementary school teacher. They weren't wealthy by any means, but they provided everything we needed. There was always a stark difference between me and my sister Tiffany, though. While I was practical and hands-on, Tiffany was a dreamer with big aspirations. She was always the academic star, winning spelling bees and getting straight A's, while I struggled with traditional schooling but could fix just about anything mechanical. Our lives changed dramatically 5 years ago when our parents were killed in a car accident on their way home from their anniversary dinner. At 31, I suddenly became the guardian for my then 14-year-old sister. The insurance money helped, but it wasn't enough to cover the lifestyle Tiffany was accustomed to and save for her college education. That's when I had to step up in ways I never imagined. After high school, I had chosen vocational training instead of college, which my sister always viewed as settling for less. But that decision set me on a path to financial stability. I started as an apprentice HVAC technician, learning everything I could about heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. Within 5 years, I had earned all my certifications and was making a solid income. By the time our parents passed away, I had already started my own company, Morgan HVAC Services, named after my mother's maiden name. "You could have been so much more," Tiffany would often say when she was in high school, not understanding that I was proud of what I'd built. "Don't you want to do something important with your life?" Those comments stung, but I brushed them off. I knew the truth. I was providing an essential service, making good money, and building something sustainable. By the time I took guardianship of Tiffany, my business was employing 7 technicians, and I was focusing more on management than field work, though I still took calls when we were shorthanded or for our VIP clients. My best friend Heather never understood why I tolerated Tiffany's attitude. "She needs to learn some respect," Heather would say during our weekly coffee meetups. "You're paying for her entire life, and she treats your career like it's something shameful." My boyfriend Trevor agreed. A construction project manager, Trevor came from a similar blue-collar background and understood the value of skilled trades. "There's dignity in what we do," he would remind me. "And there's nothing dignified about looking down on the people who keep the lights on and the water running." Still, I made excuses for Tiffany. She was young, she was still grieving our parents, she was under pressure at her competitive private high school. I promised our parents I would give her every opportunity, and that included funding her education at the prestigious university she had her heart set on. When Tiffany got accepted to Westmore University, an elite private college with a $56,000 annual tuition, I didn't hesitate. I had been saving for years, expanding my business, and living well below my means to ensure she could attend. The look on her face when she got her acceptance letter and I told her not to worry about the cost was worth every sacrifice. "You're really going to pay for all of it?" she had asked, tears in her eyes. "Of course," I assured her. "Mom and Dad would have wanted this for you." For the first year, things seemed to be going well. Tiffany called regularly, excited about her classes and the new friends she was making. She was majoring in international business with a minor in French, with dreams of working for a multinational corporation. I was proud of her ambition, even if she occasionally made comments about how her roommates' parents were executives or doctors. "Lisa's dad is the CFO of a Fortune 500 company," she would mention casually. "And Emma's mom is a neurosurgeon." There was always an unspoken comparison in these comments, a subtle reminder that I didn't quite measure up to her new social circle. Still, I kept supporting her financially and emotionally. Every month, I transferred money for her tuition payments, housing, meal plan, books, and a generous allowance for personal expenses. I worked longer hours, took on more commercial contracts, and continued to grow my business to support her dreams. What I didn't realize was how quickly Tiffany was changing, or perhaps how her true colors were finally showing. The sister, who once looked up to me, was slowly morphing into someone who seemed ashamed of her roots, someone who measured worth by degrees and job titles rather than character and work ethic. The real trouble began at the start of her sophomore year when Tiffany met Bradford. Bradford Prescott came from old money. His father, Lawrence Prescott, was a senior partner at a prestigious investment banking firm in New York, and his mother, Victoria, was on the board of several cultural institutions. They had a summer home in the Hamptons and a winter chalet in Aspen. From the moment Tiffany started dating Bradford, the dynamic between us shifted even further. Bradford's family has invited me to their estate for Thanksgiving, Tiffany announced during one of our phone calls in early November. The way she emphasized estate made it clear she was impressed by their wealth. That sounds nice, I replied, trying to hide my disappointment. We had always spent Thanksgiving together, even after our parents died. Will you come home for Christmas at least? Of course, she said quickly. Actually, I was thinking of hosting a small pre-Thanksgiving dinner at my apartment for Bradford and some friends this weekend. Would you want to come? I was surprised by the invitation, but pleased. I'd love to. Do you need help with the cooking? I could come early and give you a hand. That would be great, Tiffany said, sounding genuinely enthusiastic for the first time in our conversation. Bradford's friends are very particular about food. I should have recognized the warning sign in that statement, but I was so happy to be included that I ignored it. The day before the dinner, I drove to Tiffany's off-campus apartment that I paid for. It was a beautiful two-bedroom unit in one of the nicest complexes near Westmore University. When I arrived carrying grocery bags, Tiffany opened the door and immediately looked past me to the parking lot. Where's your truck? She asked. I took my personal car today, I explained, referring to my modest Honda Civic rather than the work truck with my company logo prominently displayed.
She visibly relaxed.
Good. Come in quickly before anyone sees you. Inside, Tiffany had clearly gone all out for this dinner. There were fresh flowers on the table, new dinnerware I didn't recognize, and a bottle of expensive wine chilling in an ice bucket. This looks lovely, I commented. You didn't need to go to so much expense. It's important to make a good impression, Tiffany replied, taking the grocery bags from me. Bradford's friends are very connected. Some of them already have job offers at top firms for after graduation. As we prepared the meal together, Tiffany peppered me with instructions that felt more like warnings. When they ask what you do, maybe just say you own a business, she suggested while chopping vegetables. No need to get into specifics. I'm not going to lie about my work, Tiffany, I replied, feeling the familiar sting of her shame. I've built a successful company from the ground up. I employ 15 people now. That's something to be proud of. I know, she said quickly. It's just, these people, they might not understand. It wasn't the first time Tiffany had shown embarrassment about my profession. During Parents' Weekend her freshman year, she had introduced me vaguely as being in building services, rather than explaining I owned an HVAC company. When her roommate's father, a corporate attorney, had pressed for details, Tiffany quickly changed the subject. As we continued cooking, my phone rang. It was the office number. Morgan HVAC, this is Rachel, I answered professionally. Jessica, my office manager, sounded apologetic. Rachel, I'm so sorry to bother you, but the Riverside Medical Center's operating room AC system is malfunctioning. Their backup isn't keeping up with demand, and they've got surgeries scheduled. My stomach sank. Riverside was one of our biggest clients, and an operating room without proper temperature control was a serious issue. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I promised, then turned to Tiffany. I'm so sorry, but I have an emergency call at the hospital. Their operating room AC is down. Tiffany's face fell. You're leaving? Now? The guests will be here in 3 hours. I'll be back in time, I assured her. The main dishes are already prepped. I just need to take care of this. Can't someone else handle it? She asked, her voice rising in frustration. All my texts are on other calls. It's a hospital, Tiffany. People could be at risk. She didn't say anything else, just turned back to her chopping with tense shoulders. True to my word, I returned 2 hours later, but I hadn't had time to change. I was still wearing my work uniform, a navy blue jumpsuit with my company logo, when I knocked on Tiffany's door. She opened it, and immediately her eyes widened in horror at my appearance. You couldn't have changed first? She hissed. I came straight back to help you finish, I explained, feeling defensive. I didn't want to be late. Just go use my bathroom and put on something else. Anything else, she insisted, practically pushing me toward her bedroom. I changed into the spare clothes I kept in my car, simple jeans and a sweater, and returned to the kitchen to find Tiffany frantically putting final touches on the appetizers. Is this acceptable? I asked, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. She barely glanced at me. It's fine. Just help me finish setting up. The guests arrived 30 minutes later. Bradford came first, a tall young man with perfectly styled blonde hair and a confident smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was followed by two couples, Sebastian and Madison, and Justin and Amanda. From the moment they arrived, I felt out of place. They spoke about spring breaks in Bali, internships secured through family connections, and weekend trips to Manhattan, as if these were universal experiences. So, how do you know Tiffany? Sebastian asked me during a lull in conversation, swirling his wine glass with practiced precision. Before I could answer, Tiffany jumped in. Rachel is my sister. She's just in town visiting for the weekend. How nice. Madison smiled politely. Where are you visiting from? I actually live here in town. I corrected gently. I own a local business. Really? What kind of business? Amanda asked, seeming genuinely interested. I noticed Tiffany tense beside me. I own an HVAC company. We specialize in commercial and residential heating and cooling systems. HVAC. Sebastian repeated. So, you're like the person people call when their air conditioning breaks? Among other things, I nodded. We also do commercial installations, including for the new medical center across town. Sebastian and Justin exchanged a glance I couldn't quite interpret. That must be interesting, Justin said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. It is, I replied firmly. Especially when you're ensuring operating rooms stay at the right temperature for surgeries. Amanda leaned forward. That actually sounds really important. My uncle needed emergency surgery last year, and I never thought about all the systems that need to work perfectly in a hospital. I smiled gratefully at her, but Tiffany quickly redirected the conversation. Bradford, why don't you tell everyone about your father's new yacht? She suggested brightly. As the evening progressed, I became increasingly aware of how Tiffany was misrepresenting our family background. She spoke about our parents as if our father had been a business owner rather than a plumber, referred to family vacations we'd never taken, and conspicuously avoided mentioning that I was putting her through college. The Prescotts have invited me to their Thanksgiving gathering at their estate, she announced proudly over dessert. Bradford says the chef they bring in trained in Paris. What about your usual Thanksgiving traditions? Amanda asked, looking at both of us. Tiffany waved a dismissive hand. Oh, we don't really have any special traditions. Just the usual boring stuff. I felt a stab of pain at her words. Our Thanksgiving traditions had been sacred to our parents. Mom's special cranberry sauce recipe, Dad's ritual of making everyone say what they were thankful for, the annual family football game in the backyard even as snow fell around us. To hear Tiffany dismiss these memories so casually felt like a betrayal not just of me, but of our parents' memory. Actually, I began, unable to let this pass. Our parents always made Thanksgiving special. Mom would. Rachel, Tiffany cut me off sharply. No one wants to hear about all that old-fashioned stuff. The table fell momentarily silent, and I saw Bradford give Tiffany a curious look. I'd like to hear, Amanda said kindly, but Tiffany was already standing to clear plates. Who wants coffee? She asked brightly, effectively ending the conversation. As I helped her in the kitchen, I whispered, "What was that about? Why are you acting like you're ashamed of our family?" "I'm not," she hissed back. "I'm just trying to fit in. You wouldn't understand." "I understand perfectly," I replied. "You're embarrassed by where you come from. By me." "That's not true," she insisted, but she couldn't meet my eyes. "Just please don't mention your work anymore tonight. Or the fact that you pay for my tuition." I stepped back, stung by her words.
Fine.
"I'll keep your secrets." We returned to the dining room with 4 smiles, but the damage was done. I felt like a stranger in my sister's life, someone to be hidden away rather than introduced with pride. And the worst was yet to come. The day of the pre-Thanksgiving dinner arrived, and despite the tension from our previous interaction, I showed up at Tiffany's apartment 2 hours early as promised to help prepare the meal. I had spent extra time on my appearance, wearing a nice blouse and slacks, with my hair carefully styled. I was determined to make a better impression this time, for Tiffany's sake if not my own. When she opened the door, Tiffany looked me up and down with a critical eye before nodding. "You look nice," she said, which from her was high praise. "Thanks," I replied, holding up the bags of groceries I'd brought. "I picked up everything on your list, plus I brought the ingredients for Mom's cranberry sauce. I thought it might be nice to have at least one family tradition at the table." Tiffany hesitated before taking the bags. "I already bought cranberry sauce from that gourmet market Bradford recommended." "Oh," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "Well, maybe we can make both." The kitchen was already a flurry of activity. Tiffany had clearly been preparing for hours, with several dishes in various stages of completion. "I didn't realize you'd started already," I commented, setting down my purse. "You should have called me. I could have come earlier." "I wanted to get a head start," she replied, returning to chopping vegetables. Bradford's mother gave me some advice about the menu. Apparently, Sebastian is very particular about how his food is prepared. I bit back a comment about Sebastian's particularity and instead rolled up my sleeves. "Just tell me what you need me to do." For the next hour, we worked together in relative harmony, preparing an elaborate meal that would have made our mother proud, even if it didn't include many of her recipes. Tiffany had obviously gone to great expense, with imported cheeses, organic vegetables, and prime cuts of meat. "This must have cost a fortune," I remarked as I arranged an appetizer platter. Tiffany shrugged. "Bradford helped with some of it. That was nice of him," I said carefully, not wanting to point out that the money ultimately came from me anyway, through her generous allowance. "His family believes in quality," she replied. "His mother says you can always tell someone's background by what they serve at dinner." I let that comment pass, focusing instead on making sure everything was perfect for my sister's sake. The first guests arrived precisely at 6. Bradford entered first, carrying an expensive bottle of wine and looking every bit the wealthy college student in his cashmere sweater and designer jeans. He gave Tiffany a quick kiss on the cheek before nodding politely to me. "Rachel, right?" he said, as if we hadn't met several times before. "Thanks for helping Tiffany put this together." Before I could respond, Sebastian and Madison arrived, followed closely by Justin and Amanda. 2 new faces completed the group. A young man named Zachary, who apparently came from a banking family like Bradford's, and his girlfriend Zoe, who studied art history and spoke with an affected accent. "Everything looks wonderful," Amanda said warmly, the only one who seemed genuinely pleased to see me. "The apartment looks different," Sebastian commented, glancing around. "Did you redecorate, Tiffany?" "Just a few touches," my sister replied, though I noticed several new pieces of furniture and artwork that hadn't been there during my last visit. As everyone settled in the living room with drinks, I excused myself to check on the main course. From the kitchen, I could hear their conversation drift in snippets. "Daddy just closed another major acquisition." That was Bradford. "We're thinking Majorca for spring break." Madison's voice. "The internship is basically guaranteed." "My uncle sits on the board." Sebastian again. I returned with a tray of appetizers, setting them on the coffee table. "Thank you," Sebastian said, glancing up briefly. Then, with a smirk to Zachary, he added, "Always nice when the help is so efficient." A uncomfortable silence fell over the room. I stood frozen, the comment hitting me like a physical blow. Sebastian, Amanda admonished quietly. Tiffany laughed nervously. Rachel isn't the help. She's just helping with the house. Not she's my sister. Not she's the reason I can attend Westmore. Just helping with the house, as if I were some distant acquaintance doing her a favor. I managed to maintain my composure as I returned to the kitchen, but my hands were shaking. I had never felt so reduced, so invisible in my sister's life. A moment later, Amanda joined me in the kitchen. Need any help? She offered. I'm fine, I replied stiffly, checking the roast in the oven. Sebastian can be a real jerk, she said quietly. Just ignore him. I nodded, grateful for her kindness. Thanks. So, Tiffany mentioned you own your own business? She continued, seemingly genuinely interested. Yes, an HVAC company, I explained, relaxing slightly. We handle heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems for both residential and commercial properties. That's really impressive, Amanda said. My dad always told me that the trades are where the real opportunities are. He regrets pushing me toward a business degree when I was more interested in architectural design. It's never too late to change paths, I offered. What made you choose HVAC? She asked. As I explained my journey from vocational school to business owner, I noticed Tiffany hovering in the doorway, her expression increasingly tense. Dinner's almost ready, she interrupted. Amanda, Bradford was just asking about your family's new vacation home. Amanda looked confused. Oh, we don't have a new vacation home. I thought Bradford said. No, that must have been someone else, Amanda replied, giving me an apologetic smile before following Tiffany back to the living room. When dinner was finally served, everyone took their places at the elaborately set table. I had helped Tiffany prepare everything, but as the guests complimented the meal, she accepted the praise without acknowledging my contribution. This is delicious, Tiffany, Bradford said. You really outdid yourself. I had no idea you were such a good cook, Zoe added. Oh, I picked up a few things here and there, Tiffany replied modestly. Bradford's mother gave me some wonderful tips. I took a sip of water and kept quiet. The conversation flowed smoothly for a while, centered mostly on their university experiences, summer internship prospects, and mutual acquaintances from wealthy families. I had little to contribute but listened politely, occasionally catching Amanda's sympathetic glance. So, Rachel, Bradford eventually turned to me, perhaps feeling obligated to include me in the conversation. Tiffany mentioned you didn't attend college. Was that a financial decision? I felt every eye at the table turn to me. Not really, I replied carefully. I was always more interested in hands-on work than academics. I went to technical school for HVAC certification instead. Technical school, Sebastian repeated, as if the words tasted strange. Like a community college? No, it's a specialized vocational program, I explained. It's quite rigorous, actually. The certification process requires thousands of hours of practical experience plus written exams. Interesting choice, Bradford commented, though his tone suggested the opposite. My father always says education is the greatest predictor of success. I suppose that depends on how you define success, I countered, keeping my voice level. My business generates 7 figures in annual revenue. Sebastian nearly choked on his wine. From fixing air conditioners? From providing essential services that require technical expertise, I corrected him. The margins on commercial contracts are quite substantial. I could see Tiffany growing increasingly uncomfortable as the conversation continued. What about you, Tiffany? Amanda asked innocently. Do you ever help with Rachel's business when you're home from school? Tiffany's face flushed. No, I'm focusing on my international business degree. I plan to work in corporate finance after graduation. Rachel's business sounds pretty corporate to me, Amanda persisted. Managing employees, handling major contracts. That's valuable experience. It's not the same, Tiffany said dismissively. I'm interested in global markets, not local repair services. Her words stung, but I try not to show it. Every business has its place, I said diplomatically. The conversation might have moved on if Zachary hadn't decided to probe further. So, how exactly does someone get into the AC repair business? Is it like a family thing? Our father was a plumber. I began, so I was always around tools and… Rachel, please, Tiffany interrupted sharply. No one wants to hear about Dad's plumbing business. I'm just answering Zachary's question, I said, surprised by her outburst. Well, it's boring, she snapped. And frankly, embarrassing. The table went silent. Bradford looked uncomfortably at his plate while Madison and Sebastian exchanged glances. Amanda's eyes widened in shock. Embarrassing? I repeated, hardly believing what I was hearing. Yes, embarrassing. Tiffany's voice rose. You're just an AC tech. Stop acting like it's some prestigious career. You fix broken air conditioners for a living. You crawl around in people's attics and basements. Do you have any idea how that sounds to people like Bradford and Sebastian? I sat frozen, her words hitting me like physical blows. Tiffany, Bradford murmured, looking mortified. That's enough. But Tiffany wasn't finished. You don't belong here, she continued, tears of frustration in her eyes. This isn't your world. You're ruining everything with your blue-collar talk and your technical school education. Just go, please. You're embarrassing me in front of everyone. The silence that followed was deafening. I slowly placed my napkin beside my plate and stood up. I apologize for embarrassing you with my honest work, I said quietly, my voice surprisingly steady despite the emotion choking me. Enjoy your dinner. As I walked out, I heard Amanda say, that was completely uncalled for, Tiffany, but I didn't stay to hear my sister's response. I gathered my purse and coat and left without another word, the door closing behind me with a soft click that somehow felt more final than a slam would have. Outside in the cool November air, I finally let the tears fall as I walked to my car, my sister's words echoing in my head, "You're just an AC tech." The drive home passed in a blur of tears and disbelief. I couldn't reconcile the sister I'd raised with the young woman who had just humiliated me in front of her friends. As soon as I pulled into my driveway, I called Heather. "Can you come over?" I asked, my voice breaking. Something happened with Tiffany. 20 minutes later, Heather was at my door with a bottle of wine and a sympathetic ear. We sat on my couch as I recounted the entire painful evening. "She said that to you? After everything you've done for her?" Heather was incredulous. "Rachel, that's beyond ungrateful. That's cruel. I keep thinking I must have done something to provoke her," I said, wiping away tears. "Maybe I embarrassed her somehow without realizing it." "Stop that right now," Heather said firmly. "You didn't do anything wrong. You were invited to dinner. You helped cook. You were polite to her stuck-up friends. She's the one who should be ashamed, not you." As the initial shock began to fade, anger started to take its place. I thought about all I had sacrificed for Tiffany over the years, especially since our parents died. "Do you know how many extra jobs I took on to afford her tuition?" I said, pacing my living room. "How many weekends and holidays I worked while she was enjoying spring breaks in Cancun and winter ski trips with friends?" "You've given up a lot," Heather agreed. "When Mom and Dad died, I could have used that insurance money for myself," I continued. "I could have expanded my business faster, bought a bigger house, taken actual vacations. Instead, I put every penny into a college fund for Tiffany because that's what they would have wanted. And she doesn't even appreciate it." "Apparently not." I sank back onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "You know what the worst part is? She's ashamed of me, but she's not ashamed to spend my money. The money I make from being just an AC tech." Heather was quiet for a moment. "Have you ever calculated exactly how much you've spent on her education and living expenses?" I hadn't, not in precise terms. While Heather poured us each another glass of wine, I pulled out my laptop and opened my financial records. For the next hour, we went through bank statements, tuition payments, rent transfers, and credit card bills. $123,000, I finally said, staring at the spreadsheet in disbelief. "That's how much I've spent on Tiffany's education and expenses in the last year and a half. And that doesn't even count all the things you can't put a price on," Heather added. "The time, the emotional support, the sacrifice of your own goals. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of shock and clarity. I've been enabling her behavior, haven't I? I keep making excuses for her, just like I did when she was younger. You've been trying to be both sister and parent, Heather said gently. It's an impossible position. My phone buzzed with a text message from Tiffany. You totally overreacted. You embarrassed me in front of Bradford. Why couldn't you just play along for one night? No apology. No acknowledgement of how hurtful her words had been. Just blame. I showed the message to Heather, who shook her head in disbelief. She still doesn't get it. No, I agreed, she doesn't. I didn't respond to the text, and Tiffany didn't send another one that night. Heather stayed over, sleeping in my guest room because she was worried about me. In the morning, I woke up hoping that perhaps Tiffany had reflected overnight and would call with an apology. My phone remained silent. 3 days passed without any contact from my sister. No call, no text, no email. I went through the motions at work, trying to focus on the business I'd built from the ground up, the business that was apparently so embarrassing to my sister. On the third day, Trevor came over for dinner. I hadn't told him about the incident yet, wanting to process it myself first. You seem distracted, he observed as we ate. Is everything okay? I took a deep breath and told him everything. Unlike Heather's immediate indignation, Trevor listened quietly, his expression growing more serious as I related the dinner party disaster. What are you going to do? He asked when I finished. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to call her and demand an apology. Another part never wants to speak to her again. What about her tuition? Trevor asked carefully. The next semester payment is coming up soon, isn't it? I nodded. Westmore University operated on a semester system, and the spring semester payment of $28,000 was due in 3 weeks. I haven't decided about that yet, I said, though the thought had been lurking in the back of my mind since the dinner party. Rachel, Trevor said gently, I know you promised your parents you'd take care of Tiffany. But at some point, you have to ask yourself if you're really helping her by funding this lifestyle where she looks down on the very person making it possible. That night, after Trevor left, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about his words and the decision looming before me. Was I truly helping Tiffany by continuing to fund her education when she showed such contempt for me and the work that made it possible? The next morning, I logged into my social media accounts and saw that Tiffany had posted photos from the Thanksgiving dinner at Bradford's family estate. The images showed her smiling alongside the Prescott family in their elegant dining room, raising glasses of champagne in a toast. Her caption read, "So grateful to spend Thanksgiving with my real family. Some people just understand class and ambition." The words felt like a direct jab at me. Real family. As if our parents and our shared history meant nothing. As if my sacrifices for her were worthless. That afternoon, I received an automated email reminder from Westmore University about the upcoming tuition payment. The message was addressed to me since I was the one who had been making the payments, not Tiffany. Sitting at my desk, staring at the email with its polite reminder of the $28,000 due date, I made my decision. It wasn't a choice made in anger, though I certainly felt hurt and betrayed. It was a recognition that our relationship had become unhealthy and that continuing to financially support Tiffany while she disparaged me was not doing either of us any favors. I opened my banking app and looked at the college fund account I had established for Tiffany. There was currently $84,000 in it, enough for the upcoming semester plus the next 2 after that. With steady hands, I initiated a transfer of the entire amount back to my business account. The confirmation screen asked if I was sure I wanted to proceed with the transfer. I paused, giving myself one last chance to reconsider. Then I clicked confirm. It was done. For the first time since our parents died, Tiffany would need to take responsibility for her own education and expenses. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. I didn't call to tell her. Part of me wanted her to receive the notification from the university that her tuition payment had not been received, to experience that moment of realization on her own. It wasn't about revenge. It was about finally allowing her to face the consequences of her actions and attitudes. That night, I wrote in my journal, trying to process the complex emotions swirling inside me. Guilt mingled with resolve, sadness with a strange sense of freedom. I had spent so many years defining myself by my responsibility to Tiffany that stepping back from that role left me feeling both unmoored and unburdened. "I hope I'm doing the right thing," I wrote. "Mom, Dad, I've tried my best to give her everything you would have wanted for her. But I can't keep sacrificing my self-respect. I can't keep funding her disdain for me and everything we came from. Maybe this will be the wake-up call she needs. Or maybe it will be the final break between us. Either way, I have to believe that you would understand." I closed the journal and went to bed, sleeping better than I had in days. The decision was made. Now I just had to wait for the fallout. The call came exactly 1 week later. I was at the office reviewing a major commercial contract when Jessica buzzed my intercom. "Your sister is online too," she said. "She sounds upset." I took a deep breath before picking up the phone. "Hello, Tiffany." "What the hell, Rachel?" She was practically shouting. "I just got an email from the financial office saying my tuition hasn't been paid and I'm going to be dropped from my classes if it's not resolved in 3 days. What's going on?" "I decided not to pay your tuition this semester," I said calmly, having rehearsed this conversation in my mind countless times over the past week. There was a moment of stunned silence before Tiffany exploded again. "You can't do that. You've always paid my tuition. What am I supposed to do?" "You have options," I replied, maintaining my composure. "You could apply for financial aid, take out student loans like most college students, get a part-time job, or transfer to a less expensive school." "Are you serious right now?" Her voice rose even higher. "This is my education we're talking about. My future. You can't just pull the rug out from under me like this." "I've been supporting your education for 1.5 years," I reminded her. "That's more than many students get." "But why?" She was crying now. "Why are you doing this to me?" "I think you know why, Tiffany," I said quietly. "The things you said at that dinner party, the way you've been treating me, the shame you seem to feel about our family and my profession. It's become clear that you don't respect me or the sacrifices I've made for you." "Is this about what I said?" she asked, her tone shifting to incredulity. "You're ruining my college career because of one comment made in the heat of the moment." "It wasn't one comment, Tiffany. It was the culmination of a pattern of behavior that's been building for years. You called me just an AC tech and kicked me out of your dinner party, but you've been embarrassed by me and what I do for a long time." "I didn't mean it like that," she protested. "I was just stressed about impressing Bradford's friends. And that made it okay to humiliate me? To dismiss everything I've done for you?" "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings," she said, sounding anything but sorry. "But this is a massive overreaction. You're being petty and vindictive." "This isn't about revenge," I insisted. "It's about boundaries and respect. I can't continue to financially support someone who treats me like I'm beneath them." "Fine," she snapped. "I'll talk to Bradford. Maybe his parents can help until you come to your senses." The call ended abruptly, and I sat back in my chair, emotionally drained but oddly calm. I had expected the conversation to be difficult, but Tiffany's complete lack of understanding was still disappointing. 2 days later, Tiffany showed up at my house unannounced. When I opened the door, I was shocked by her appearance. Her eyes were red and puffy, her normally perfectly styled hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. "Bradford broke up with me," she announced without preamble, pushing past me into the living room. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely surprised. "What happened?" "What do you think happened?" she shot back bitterly. "I told him I couldn't afford tuition anymore because my sister cut me off, and suddenly he was not ready for a serious relationship and thought we should take a break to focus on our studies." I watched as she paced my living room, anger and hurt radiating from her. "Did you ask his parents for help like you mentioned?" She stopped pacing and glared at me. "Yes, and it was humiliating. His father suggested I look into scholarship programs for disadvantaged students, and his mother recommended a waitressing job at their country club." Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy for her. "I'm sorry it didn't work out with Bradford." "Are you?" she challenged. "Because it seems like you're enjoying watching my life fall apart." That's not true, Tiffany, I said firmly. I never wanted to hurt you. I just couldn't continue enabling behavior that was harmful to both of us. By cutting off my tuition without warning? How is that not meant to hurt me? It was a consequence, not a punishment, I explained. Actions have consequences. Treating someone with contempt while depending on their financial support has consequences. She sank onto my couch, deflating slightly. So, what am I supposed to do now? Drop out of school? Transfer to community college? Throw away everything I've worked for? Those are decisions you'll need to make, I said, sitting across from her. But they're your decisions, Tiffany. For perhaps the first time in your life, you're facing a challenge that I'm not going to solve for you. Zoe and Madison think I should apologize to you, she said after a long silence. They said I was way out of line at the dinner party. And what do you think? I asked. She looked away. I think you're being unreasonable and vindictive, but I also think I need my tuition paid. So if an apology is what it takes, fine. I'm sorry for what I said. The words were right, but the intention behind them was all wrong. Tiffany, an apology is meaningless if it's just a transaction to get what you want. What do you want from me? She cried in frustration. I said I'm sorry. What else do I have to do to fix this? This isn't something you can fix with a forced apology and then go back to business as usual, I explained. Our relationship needs to change fundamentally. The dynamic where I provide everything and you treat me with contempt isn't healthy for either of us. So, you're just cutting me off completely? She looked genuinely fearful now. After promising Mom and Dad you'd take care of me? I'm not abandoning you, I assured her. I'm still your sister, and I still care about you. But the blank check approach to your education and lifestyle is over. She left shortly after that, no closer to understanding my position than when she arrived. The next few days brought a barrage of texts and calls, alternating between guilt trips, anger, and occasional attempts at genuine communication. Then the flying monkeys began to appear. Margaret and William, old friends of our parents who had remained in touch after their deaths, called to express their concern about the family rift they'd heard about from Tiffany. She's devastated, Rachel, Margaret told me over the phone. She says you've cut her off completely, and she might have to leave school. That's not exactly accurate, I replied, explaining the situation as objectively as I could. Well, I can understand you being hurt by what she said, Margaret acknowledged. But she's young and still figuring things out. Your parents would want you to support her education. My parents would want her to respect the people who help her, I countered. They raised us with better values than what Tiffany is displaying. William took a more direct approach when he called. Rachel, whatever disagreement you're having with your sister, using her education as leverage isn't right. She's your responsibility. She's 19, William, I reminded him. She's an adult capable of making her own choices and facing the consequences of those choices. So, you're just going to let her drop out of college? He challenged. That's her decision, I said firmly. There are other options besides the expensive private university she's currently attending. She could transfer to a state school, apply for scholarships, take out loans like most students, or get a job to help with expenses. You know that's not what your parents would have wanted for her, he insisted. My parents would have wanted her to grow into a responsible, respectful adult, I replied. Sometimes that requires difficult lessons. After hanging up, I felt a mixture of frustration and doubt. Was I being too harsh? Should I reconsider my position for the sake of family peace? I called Heather for a reality check. You're doing the right thing, she assured me after I expressed my doubts. Tiffany needs to learn that she can't treat people like trash while taking their money. She's manipulating these family friends the same way she's been manipulating you. But what if she really does have to leave school? I worried. Then that's a consequence of her actions, Heather said firmly. And honestly, maybe a break from that environment would be good for her. She's clearly absorbed some toxic values from her wealthy friends. Trevor expressed similar sentiments when I saw him that weekend. Stand your ground, he advised. If you give in now, you're teaching her that she can treat you however she wants without consequences. With their support, I maintained my position despite the continued pressure from Tiffany and various well-meaning but misinformed friends. I wasn't enjoying my sister's distress, but I recognized that this painful lesson was necessary for both of us. The most difficult call came from Tiffany's academic advisor at Westmore. "Ms. Morgan, I hope you don't mind me reaching out," the woman began. Tiffany gave me her contact information and explained the situation with her tuition. "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully, "but this is a family matter." "I understand," she replied. "I just wanted you to know that Tiffany is an exceptional student with tremendous potential. It would be a shame for her education to be interrupted. The university does have some emergency scholarship funds available, though they wouldn't cover the full tuition amount." "That's good to know," I said. "I'll encourage Tiffany to apply for those resources." "She already has," the advisor informed me. "But I thought you should know that she's also taken a job at the campus library and is looking for additional work. She seems determined to stay in school." After that call, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps Tiffany was finally beginning to take responsibility for herself. It was a small step, but an important one. The next time Tiffany called, her tone was different. Less accusatory, more subdued. "I got a job at the library," she said without preamble. "It only pays minimum wage, but it's something. And I've applied for every scholarship and grant I could find." "That's great, Tiffany," I said, genuinely proud of her initiative. "How are your classes going?" "They're fine," she replied, then hesitated before adding, "I moved out of my apartment. I couldn't afford the rent anymore. I'm sharing a dorm room with Zoe now." "How's that working out?" "It's smaller than I'm used to," she admitted. "But Zoe's been really supportive, actually. And Madison too, surprisingly. They both told me they thought what I said to you was terrible." It was the first acknowledgement she'd made that her friends didn't all share her entitled perspective. Maybe there was hope for growth after all. 2 weeks passed with minimal communication between Tiffany and me. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was working multiple jobs while trying to maintain her class schedule and had applied for student loans for the following semester. While I felt proud of her efforts, I also worried about her. Despite everything, she was still my little sister. On a busy Tuesday afternoon, Jessica buzzed my office intercom. "Your sister is here to see you," she announced, sounding surprised. I was equally surprised. Tiffany had never visited my workplace before. "Send her in," I replied, quickly clearing some papers from my desk. When Tiffany entered, I was struck by how different she looked from the polished, preppy college student I was used to seeing. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, she wore minimal makeup, and her designer clothes had been replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. "I hope it's okay that I stopped by," she said, hovering uncertainly in the doorway. "Of course," I replied, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "Have a seat." As she sat down, I noticed her looking around my office with what appeared to be genuine interest. The walls displayed framed certificates, industry awards, and photos of major projects my company had completed. "I've never been to your office before," she commented. "It's nice." "Thanks," I said, still trying to gauge the purpose of her visit. "What brings you by today?" "I wanted to talk to you in person," she explained. "And I was curious about where you work. I realized I've never actually seen your company." Before I could respond, my office phone rang. "Excuse me for a moment," I said, answering the call. It was about an emergency situation at one of our major commercial clients. I listened carefully, then made a quick decision. "Send Jessica and Mark with the necessary equipment," I instructed. "I'll meet them there in 20 minutes to assess the situation." After hanging up, I looked apologetically at Tiffany. "I'm sorry, but I have an emergency at a client site. We can reschedule this conversation if you want." To my surprise, she asked, "Could I come with you? I mean, if that's okay. I'd like to see what you actually do." Taken aback, but pleased by her interest, I agreed. "Sure, if you really want to." 20 minutes later, we arrived at Riverdale Corporate Center, a 12-story office building that housed several major businesses. The property manager met us at the entrance, looking stressed. "The entire 5th floor is without cooling," he explained as we walked toward the service elevator. The Lawson Group has their headquarters there, and they're threatening to break their lease if we can't resolve this immediately. We'll take care of it, I assured him confidently. My team should already be assessing the system. As we entered the mechanical room, I saw Jessica and Mark already at work diagnosing the problem. I introduced Tiffany briefly, then jumped into action, discussing technical details with my team and examining the building's complex HVAC system. For the next hour, Tiffany stood quietly to the side, watching as we identified a failing compressor and began implementing a temporary solution while ordering the replacement part for permanent repair. I was completely in my element, directing my team, speaking authoritatively with the property manager, and solving a complex technical problem under pressure. At one point, I caught Tiffany watching me with an expression I couldn't quite identify. It wasn't quite admiration, but it definitely wasn't the embarrassment I'd grown accustomed to seeing when I discussed my work. When we finally had the system running again with a temporary fix, the property manager shook my hand gratefully. "This is why we keep our contract with your company, Rachel," he said. "Your team's response time and expertise are unmatched." As we left the building, Tiffany was uncharacteristically quiet. In the car, she finally spoke. "That was really impressive," she said. "The way everyone listened to you and respected your opinion. Even that property manager treated you like you were the most important person in the room." "That's because in that situation, I replied matter-of-factly. "My team and I were the only ones who could solve their problem." "I never really understood what you did," she admitted. "I just thought of it as fixing air conditioners." "That's part of it," I acknowledged. "But it's also about designing systems, managing a team, building client relationships, and running a business." We drove in silence for a few minutes before she spoke again. "Your employee, Jessica, really respects you. She told me how you gave her a chance when no one else would hire a woman as an HVAC technician." "Jessica is one of my best techs," I said proudly. "She just needed someone to look past gender stereotypes and see her skills." When we arrived back at my office, Tiffany asked if we could continue our conversation. We settled in my office, and for the first time in weeks, we really talked. "I came here today to apologize," she began hesitantly. "Not because I want you to pay my tuition, but because I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize how horrible I was to you." I stayed silent, giving her space to continue. "When I said you were just an AC tech, I was being a complete snob," she admitted, her eyes filling with tears. "I was so caught up in impressing Bradford and his friends that I was willing to hurt the one person who's always been there for me." "Why was their approval so important?" I asked gently. She thought for a moment. "I guess I wanted to belong in their world. I wanted to feel special and important. Bradford made me feel like I could be part of something exclusive, something elite." "And you felt I was holding you back from that?" "Yes," she admitted, "which was stupid and shallow. Bradford broke up with me the minute he found out I couldn't afford tuition anymore. So much for belonging in his world." "I'm sorry about Bradford," I said sincerely. She shrugged. "I'm not anymore. Amanda actually reached out to me after everything happened. She told me Bradford does this all the time. Dates girls from less wealthy backgrounds, shows them off to his friends, then dumps them when they become inconvenient." "Amanda seemed different from the others," I commented. "She is," Tiffany agreed. "She comes from money too, but she's not a snob about it. She's been really supportive, actually. She even helped me find my job at the campus coffee shop." "You're working at the coffee shop too?" Tiffany nodded. "Between that and the library, plus some tutoring gigs, I'm making enough to cover my dorm fees and expenses." "Not tuition, though," she added quickly. "I'm not here to ask for that. What are you asking for, then?" I inquired. She took a deep breath. "A second chance. Not financially, but as your sister. I've been awful to you, Rachel. Not just at the dinner party, but for years. You've sacrificed so much for me, and I've been ungrateful and disrespectful." Her sincerity was palpable, and I felt my resolve softening. "I've missed my sister," I admitted. "I've missed you too," she said, wiping away tears. "And I'm starting to realize that I've been chasing the wrong things. I was so focused on status and appearances that I couldn't see the value in what you do, in what our parents did. We talked for another hour, more openly and honestly than we had in years. Tiffany explained how her perspective had begun to shift once she was forced to support herself, how she gained a new appreciation for hard work and financial independence. "I don't know if I can stay at Westmore," she confessed eventually. "Even with my jobs and the partial scholarship I got, the tuition is just too high." "Have you considered alternatives?" I asked. "I looked into transferring to state for next semester," she said. "Their business program is actually really good, and the tuition is about a third of Westmore's." I nodded, impressed by her research. "That sounds like a practical solution." "There's another option too," she said hesitantly. "Amanda's dad suggested I look into the work-study program at Westmore. If I work part-time in a department related to my major, they'll cover part of my tuition. It would mean fewer classes each semester, so it would take longer to graduate, but I could stay at Westmore." "That's a good option too," I agreed. "Which are you leaning toward?" "I'm not sure yet," she admitted. "A few months ago, the idea of leaving Westmore would have seemed like the end of the world. Now, I'm not so attached to the prestige of it. I just want a good education that doesn't leave me in crushing debt." It was exactly the kind of mature thinking I'd hoped she would develop. After a moment of consideration, I made a decision. "I have a proposition for you," I said. "I'm not willing to fully fund your education anymore, but I would be willing to help with community college tuition if you're willing to work part-time at my company." Her eyes widened. "Really? You'd let me work for you after how I've treated you?" "Everyone deserves a second chance," I said. "And it would be good for both of us. You'd learn valuable business skills, and I could use help with administrative tasks and customer service." "I don't know anything about HVAC systems," she pointed out. "You don't need to," I assured her. "You'd be working in the office, handling calls, scheduling appointments, managing paperwork. Your business classes would actually be relevant." "When would I start?" she asked, clearly intrigued by the idea. "How about now?" I suggested. "You could work here part-time for the rest of the semester, and if it goes well, we can discuss tuition assistance for community college next semester." "I'd like that," she said sincerely. "Thank you, Rachel. Not just for this opportunity, but for the wake-up call. I needed it, even though it hurt." 2 weeks later, Tiffany was working 3 afternoons a week at my office, learning the administrative side of the business. She was a quick study, and her business education actually proved useful in helping streamline some of our office procedures. Bradford called her once during this period, apparently hoping to rekindle their relationship now that the Thanksgiving break was over. To my pride and surprise, Tiffany politely but firmly declined. "I'm focusing on work and school right now," she told me afterward. "And honestly, I don't think I want to date someone who values status more than character." As for me, I was enjoying having my sister back in my life on more equal, respectful terms. We weren't perfect, and we still had occasional disagreements, but the fundamental dynamic had shifted. Tiffany no longer saw me as a walking ATM or an embarrassing relation to be hidden away. She was beginning to see me as I truly was, a successful business owner who had built something valuable through hard work and determination. When Thanksgiving finally arrived, we decided to honor our parents' memory by preparing their traditional recipes together in my home. As we sat down to the meal, joined by Trevor and Heather, Tiffany raised her glass in a toast. "To Rachel," she said, her eyes bright with unshed tears, "who taught me the most important lesson of my life this year, that true success isn't measured by your job title or who you know, but by your integrity and how you treat the people who care about you." As we clinked glasses, I felt a wave of gratitude. The path to this moment had been painful for both of us, but we had emerged stronger and wiser on the other side. Sometimes, the most valuable education doesn't happen in a classroom at all. 6 months later, on a warm spring afternoon, I sat in my office reviewing the quarterly financial reports. My business had continued to thrive, with 2 major new commercial contracts signed in the past month alone. A knock at my door interrupted my concentration. "Come in," I called, looking up to see Tiffany entering with a wide smile. "I got my finals results," she announced, waving a piece of paper. Straight as this semester? That's fantastic, I exclaimed, genuinely proud. Those night classes have really been paying off. After our reconciliation, Tiffany had decided to transfer to the local community college while continuing to work part-time at my company. The arrangement had worked out better than either of us could have anticipated. She was excelling academically while gaining practical business experience, and I was enjoying watching her grow into a responsible, hard-working young woman. Professor Wilson says my business plan project was one of the best he's seen, she continued excitedly. He actually suggested I should consider implementing it in a real company someday. What was the project about again? I asked, though I remembered her working on it for weeks. Expanding an HVAC business to include green energy solutions, she replied. Solar integration, energy-efficient systems, that kind of thing. I used Morgan HVAC as my case study. I smiled at the irony. 6 months ago, Tiffany had been mortified to be associated with my lowly HVAC business. Now, she was proudly using it as the foundation for her academic work. I said thoughtfully, that's actually not a bad idea for the business. I've been thinking about moving in that direction anyway. Really? Her eyes lit up. I have all the market research and projections. I could show you. Bring it to our staff meeting tomorrow, I suggested. I'd love to hear your pitch. The change in Tiffany over these months had been remarkable. The entitled, status-conscious girl who had kicked me out of her dinner party was gone, replaced by a young woman who understood the value of hard work and genuine relationships. After her shift that day, we met Trevor for dinner at our favorite restaurant. As we waited for our food, Tiffany mentioned she had run into Amanda earlier that week. She's transferred to State University, Tiffany told us. Apparently her dad lost a bunch of money in some bad investments and they can't afford Westmore anymore. That must have been a difficult adjustment for her, Trevor commented. Actually, she says she's happier now, Tiffany replied. The pressure at Westmore was intense, especially in Bradford's circle. She's dating a music major named Carter now, and she says it's refreshing to be with someone who cares more about art than appearances. Good for her, I said sincerely.
How about you?
Any new friends at community college? A few, she acknowledged. They're different from my Westmore friends. More focused on learning practical skills than networking with the right people. I'm actually enjoying it. As we continued our meal, Tiffany surprised me by bringing up the past. Do you remember how I used to be embarrassed to tell people you were an HVAC specialist? She asked. Yesterday in my economics class, the professor was talking about successful local businesses, and he mentioned Morgan HVAC specifically. I practically jumped out of my seat to say, that's my sister's company. From embarrassment to pride, Trevor observed with a smile. That's quite a journey. I was such a snob, Tiffany admitted, shaking her head. I thought success meant having a prestigious title and moving in elite circles. I never understood that what you built is more impressive than any corporate job could be. Running your own business isn't for everyone, I acknowledged. But it's been rewarding for me. It's more than rewarding, Tiffany insisted. You've created jobs for 15 people. You provide an essential service that literally keeps businesses running and people comfortable. And you built it all yourself, without anyone handing you connections or opportunities. Her understanding meant more to me than I could express. The sister who had once seen me as just an AC tech now recognized the value in what I did. After dinner, as we walked to our cars, Tiffany mentioned that she'd started seeing someone new. His name is Carter, she said. He's studying engineering at community college. He wants to design renewable energy systems. He sounds nice, I commented. You should bring him over for dinner sometime. I'd like that, she agreed. Actually, he was really impressed when I told him about your business. He says HVAC specialists with entrepreneurial skills are exactly what the green energy sector needs. Well, I look forward to meeting him, I said, touched by how differently she now spoke about my profession. The following weekend, Tiffany brought Carter to my house for a barbecue. He was a thoughtful, articulate young man with a genuine interest in sustainable technology. At one point, I overheard him asking Tiffany about my background. Your sister must have had amazing training to build such a successful HVAC business, he commented. She did it all herself, Tiffany replied with unmistakable pride in her voice. Started as a technician, earned all her certifications, and built her company from nothing. She's the hardest working person I know. Hearing those words from the sister who had once been ashamed of my profession brought tears to my eyes. The painful lesson I'd been forced to teach her by cutting off her college fund had ultimately led to something valuable for both of us: mutual respect and appreciation. Later that evening, after our guests had left, I reflected on our journey over the past 6 months. The hurt of being kicked out of Thanksgiving dinner for just being an AC tech had transformed into a breakthrough that strengthened our relationship in ways I couldn't have imagined. I was considering offering Tiffany a more formal role in the company after she completed her associate's degree. Her business education combined with the practical knowledge she was gaining working in our office made her a valuable asset, and I could envision a future where we might be partners rather than just sisters. The experience had changed me too. I had learned to establish boundaries, to require respect, and to recognize when helping someone was actually enabling harmful behavior. By standing firm when it would have been easier to give in, I had not only helped Tiffany grow, but I had also grown myself. Our parents would have been proud of both of us, I thought. Not because Tiffany was attending an elite university or because I was running a successful business, but because we had found our way back to the values they had taught us: hard work, respect, integrity, and family. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that hurt someone you love in the short term but ultimately led to positive change? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most important growth. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to see more content about family relationships and standing up for yourself. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries with family when necessary. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that true success isn't measured by status or prestige, but by character and the positive impact you have on others.